Hello, my dear students and the rest of the learners. Welcome to this presentation in which we are going to discuss on the topic data security and controls. My name is MemNJM, or you can simply call me Emily Swap. The content of this presentation is as follows. Number one, we are going to look on security threats and control measures. Under that subtopic, we shall look on introduction to data security and controls, the security threats and control measures. Then we shall look on the subtopic computer crimes. Under this subtopic, we shall look on the types of computer crimes, prevention and detection of computer crimes. And lastly, we shall look at the laws governing protection of information systems. Let's commence by looking on security threats and control measures. By the end of this subtopic, you should be able to, number one, define the terms data security and privacy, identify security threats on ICT and their possible control measures. Let's look at the introduction to data security and controls. When we talk about data security, we are saying that data security is the protection of data, programs, and information in computers and communication systems against unauthorized access, modification, destruction, or transfer, whether accidental or intentional. On the other hand, information security is keeping information private through keeping computer systems safe from computer criminals, natural forces, civil strife, terrorism, technological failure, and human errors. Data security involves the physical safeguards as well as the software safeguards. When we talk about data integrity, we are saying that data integrity is ensuring the accuracy and completeness of data when it enters a system and throughout its subsequent processing. It concerns the consistency, the accuracy, as well as the reliability of data. Data is said to have integrity if it is accurate and complete when it enters a system and does not become inaccurate after further processing. So, the goal of integrity is to protect against data becoming corrupted or being changed, deleted, or substituted without the user's authorization or the owner's authorization. So, how can data integrity be compromised? Data integrity can be compromised in a number of ways. Number one is through human error. For example, when you have inaccurate data entry, when the owner executes an accidental deletion, or even when the owner changes data accidentally. Number two is through natural disasters such as fires, floods, and earthquakes. Number three is through worms and viruses. Number four is through hardware malfunctions. Number five is through fraud. Number six is when there is malicious deletion or changing of data. So data control, on the other hand, are those measures that are taken by the owner of data or information in order to enforce the security of that data, of that information, or programs. While data security also includes all the measures that are taken to detect, document, and counter the threats to data and information. Data privacy is ensuring that the data which belongs to an individual is not disclosed to any other person unless with direct permission from the owner. While privacy is the right of individuals to determine what information is stored about them by organizations and government and how that information will be used or is used. Private data refers to the data or information that belongs to an individual and must not be accessed by any unauthorized person or disclosed to any other person unless with direct permission from the owner. When we talk about confidential data, we are referring to the data or information that is held by a government or organization about the people which must be protected against unauthorized access or disclosure, and the authorized persons should not use that information or data for commercial gain or any other non-official purpose without the owner being informed. So, what are the security threats and the control measures? The following are some security threats that a computer needs to be protected from. Number one is what we call the code exploits. Code exploits are normally a situation where software flaws are exploited in order to gain control of a computer or to cause it to operate in an unexpected manner. So, the code exploits often come in the form of non-executable media files, which are disguised to function in the application. Number two is denial of service attacks. These are designed to overload the capabilities of a machine or network and thereby render it unusable. The third type of threats are what we call indirect attacks. These are attacks in which one or more of the attack types that we have already mentioned are launched from a third-party computer which has been taken over remotely. The term usually is used, or the term that is usually used to refer to such kind of a threat is what we call a zombie computer. By using someone else's computer to launch an attack, it becomes far more difficult to track down the actual attacker. The fourth type of threats are what we call direct access attacks. This is gaining physical access to a computer and installing all manner of devices to compromise security, including operating system modifications, software worms, keyboard loggers, and covert listening devices. Number 5 are the malicious programs, which we also call malware. These are those programs that affect the smooth running of a system or carry out illegal activities, such as secretly collecting information from an unknown user. Some of the common types of malicious programs include viruses, worms, Trojan horse, logic bombs, backdoors, and spyware. Let's look at each of these malicious programs one at a time, commencing with viruses. So what is a virus? A computer virus or computer viruses are raw programs that attach themselves to other programs or data files in order to be executed, and thus spread amongst the computers so that they can cause a partial damage, permanent damage, or loss of files. A virus normally installs itself without permission on the computer when the files are opened for use. Viruses may either be benign or malignant. When we talk about benign viruses, we are referring to those viruses that replicate but do not do anything malicious. For example, they may beep or display messages on the screen, but they do not cause any damages to your data or information or your storage media. But when we refer to or when we talk about malignant viruses, we are referring to those viruses that attempt to damage computer resources, such as erasing a hard drive. So, what are some of the symptoms that you may experience while using a computer? And then you can be able to tell that this computer or the storage media is infected by a virus. Number 1 is when your computer becomes slow, and therefore you end up having your computer being slower than normal program operation. In other words, you find that your computer has adequate memory, it has adequate RAM, it has all other adequate resources or all the other resources that it needs to run smoothly, but you find out that it is so slow when you open programs that normally execute faster, they become very slow than normal. So, if your computer is infected by a virus, your programs may take so long or so much time to load, which is not normal, and especially when you know very well that your computer has adequate memory to allow programs to execute faster, and also when you know that your computer should operate faster than the way it is behaving. And therefore, when you realize or notice that your programs are taking too long to load, your computer is becoming slower to respond, yet it has other mandatory resources in place and adequate of them, then that can be an indicator that your computer might be infected by a virus. So, other than your programs responding slowly and your programs not performing their operations the way they should, the other indicator that is related to the abnormal program of operation is your system generally becoming slow. And therefore, slowdown of the general system can be an indicator of an infection. Number 3 is when you start encountering and experiencing unusual and frequent error messages. Whenever you try to do something that you normally do normally, you find that you are getting unwarranted, unexpected error messages. And therefore, unusual and frequent error messages can be an indicator that your computer might have been infected by a virus. Number 4 is when you realize that your files are gaining a lot of capacity abnormally. In other words, if you find that your files are increasing in size abnormally, that can be an indicator that your computer is infected by a computer virus. For example, if you find out that you have not added any additional information in a file which is supposed to be, or which you have saved as, for example, 2 kilobytes, you find that it has gained a bigger capacity, for example, 2 GB all of a sudden, yet you have not added any data or any information into it. That can be an indicator that your computer is infected by a virus. And therefore, abnormal change in file sizes is an indicator of a computer virus infection. Number 5 is when you find out that you are losing your information, or the information is getting changed, or you find that you have stored your file with information that you can be able to read, but when you open, you find that that information is no longer readable. It is garbled. You are seeing garbage inside that file. Or when you find that the files are missing, all of a sudden you create a file, you save it very well, but then it disappears and you can't even tell where it is going to. Or you create the folders, but then those folders and their content disappear. And therefore, loss or change of data, garbled information, or missing files or folders abnormally, that can also be an indicator of virus infection. In addition, if you experience system crash, the system stops working all of a sudden or once in a while, yet all the required resources are available, there is power, and there's no problem with your storage media, and your storage media is okay. But then you find that your system is crashing unexplainably. That can be an indicator of an infection. Another indicator or a symptom is when you find weird or obscene messages appearing on your screen, almost blocking you from continuing with your normal operations. And therefore, if you experience weird or obscene messages, some which may be abusive, others love messages, those can indicate that your system is infected. Another symptom is when your application crashes or hangs when opening documents. You have adequate memory in your computer. You have all other mandatory requirements for the operating system to be able to run your application. But anytime you try to open a document that you created in a file or in using a certain program, for example, if you created a document in Word, you have a letter that you saved. Anytime you try to open it, you realize that once you open that file, the whole application closes, crashes, or hangs. Every time you try to open a file, its application crashes or hangs or closes abnormally. That can be an indicator that there's a problem, and that problem might be a virus. So, how do viruses get into the system? Viruses may get into the system through a number of ways. Number one is when you download infected programs and files from the internet. Number two is through opening infected files that you have received through emails. Another way through which your computer can get infected is when you put a computer with an infected disk in the disk drive. Number four is through copies of software, including games, especially with illegal copies. Another way is through using storage medium such as floppy disks, flash disks, tape, or CDs that contains infected files. Number six is through freeware or shareware and bulletin board programs that have not been checked for viruses. Number eight is through hackers intentionally performing malicious destruction of networked systems so as to gain unauthorized access to the information. So, hackers' intent on malicious destruction of networked systems to which they have gained unauthorized access to your information. So, what are some of the types of computer viruses? Number one is what we call boot sector virus. A boot sector virus is a virus that corrupts or replaces the instructions in the small program that tells the computer how to load the rest of the operating system when the computer is started up, thereby preventing the operating system from loading properly and the computer from booting or powering up. Number two is file virus. A file virus is a virus that infects executable program files and are started each time the program is run. The third type of computer viruses is what we call the hoax or email virus. Hoax or email virus is a type of virus that comes as either an attachment to an email or as the email itself with an attractive subject, and it launches itself when the email is opened. It usually spreads by automatically mailing itself to everyone on the address book of its victim. When I talk about an email that has an attractive subject, I am saying, or I mean, that these are those emails that contain very nice title. For example, you have won. You are a winner of 1 billion shillings. Click here to get your award, and such other kind of appealing titles. And therefore, when you get tempted to click or to open such an email, that virus that it carries automatically becomes mailed to everyone in your address book. Number 4 are what we call a program virus. Program virus is a sequence of code that inserts itself into another executable program. When the application is executed, the virus code becomes active. And therefore, program viruses are the sequence of code that inserts themselves into another executable program such that once that executable program or application is executed, the virus code becomes active. The fifth type of virus is what we call the macro virus. These are viruses that affect Office documents and have become very prevalent because of the wide distribution of these documents, especially over the internet. The second type of malicious program is what we call the Trojan horses. So what is a Trojan horse? Trojan horses are computer programs that appear to perform necessary functions, but perform other undesirable activities in the background without users' knowledge by running a hidden code that erases either their entire hard disk or some programs in the disk. The third type of malicious programs is worm. A worm or worm is a malicious independent program that copies itself from one computer to another in a network, thus repeatedly copying itself into a computer's memory or onto a magnetic disk until no more space is left. They therefore make use of computer networks and exploit the security holes in your system, or what we call weaknesses in your system, to replicate. They therefore stick in the computer's memory. The fourth type of malicious programs or software is called the backdoors. These are malicious programs that secretly bypass normal authentication, thus allowing hidden remote access to a computer system by an authorized person and are intended to remain hidden to casual inspection. The backdoor may take the form of an installed program or could be in the form of an existing legitimate program or executable file. The fifth type of malicious software is what we call the logic bomb. Logic bombs are also called slug code or cones. A logic bomb is therefore a programming code which is added to the software of an application or operating system that lies dormant until a predetermined period of time or a period of latency or until a certain event occurs, therefore, or thus triggering the code into action. The sixth type is called spyware. Spyware is also sometimes referred to as adware. This is a program that is installed on a computer secretly in order to covertly monitor the user's actions without his or her knowledge and save its findings locally or transmit them to someone else. It monitors internet activity and sends the information to someone else. The spyware software can be categorized as surveillance spyware and advertising spyware, which is also called the adware. So, what are some of the measures that you are supposed to take in order to protect your computer or your data or information against malicious software? One is to install an antivirus software package on your computer system and make sure that you continually update it with the new virus definitions in order to counter the new viruses that are being manufactured on a daily basis. Some examples of antivirus programs include Norton, PC Sealing, McAfee, AVG, Microsoft Security Essentials, amongst others. So what you need to do is to purchase an antivirus software and install it in your machine. Number two, you should not use storage media from other computers in your computer unless if you have scanned them first for viruses in order to ensure that if there's any virus within or in that storage media, it is eliminated or quarantined before it is spreads to your computer. And therefore, you should always ensure that you scan your storage media, especially the removable media, for viruses before you use them in your computer. Number three, You should not open any email attachments that contain an executable file unless if you have scanned it first. So if you open your email box or your email account, and then you find that there are certain files that you have received, and those files contain .exe at the end, or .com or .vbs, you should not open any of them or download them unless if you know their purpose. Number 4, if you're using Microsoft applications, ensure that the macro virus protection is enabled. Number 5, it is important for you to use an operating system which has security features that protect computers from many of the traditional viruses. Number 6, always make a backup or create a backup of your data on a frequent basis so that in the event of system failure, the file backup that you made can be used to restore your files. Number 7, always protect your storage media by using write protected tabs if they are available. Number 8, always turn off your computer when you are through with using it. Number 9, don't use master disk to install software programs, but make a working copy and store the master. But remember to abide by the piracy protection laws. Number 10, avoid downloading computer games from electronic bulletin boards. You should also limit the use of shareware programs, that is, those programs that are freely available online. And if you have to use them, remember to check them for viruses before you run them, or before you open them, or before you execute them. And that is the 11th way of protecting your information system against malicious programs. Number 12, do not loan out your utility or other software programs. Number 13, restrict access into your computer or your information systems through the use of passwords, encryption or by encrypting messages, firewalls, biometrics, and such other protection mechanisms. Number 14, ensure that all unlicensed software is carefully examined before you use it. And that's why it is advisable that you continuously and consistently make use of only licensed software in your machines, because you are guaranteed of safety over the use of unlicensed software whose security you are not even guaranteed of. The other threat to your information or information system is unauthorized access. This is getting access to data and information without permission, with a bad intention, either to commit fraud, steal the information, or destroy or corrupt the data. It may take any of the following forms. Number one is eavesdropping. Number two is surveillance or monitoring. Number three is industrial espionage. So what is eavesdropping? Eavesdropping is tapping into communication channels in order to get information such as obtaining credit card numbers without any permission of the user or without the user knowing that somebody is tapping into their communication channel. Surveillance, on the other hand, is where a person may keep a profile of all computer activities that have been executed by another person or people. It involves accessing the storage mechanism of an individual's computer or monitoring an individual's operation of a computer, in most cases without their knowledge. Computer surveillance can be achieved by both hardware and software methods. One hardware method of computer surveillance is keying or key logging, or what we call the keystroke logging. A hardware keylogger is a device that plugs in between your keyboard and your computer that stores all the data entered via the keyboard in its memory. The software method of computer surveillance involves the use of spyware. The surveillance software includes software keyloggers, the screen capture devices, and Trojan horses. This type of software can be used by number one, the law enforcement and intelligence agencies to solve and or prevent crimes. Number two, it can be used by corporations and companies in order to monitor the use of their computer resources. Number three, they can be used by criminals to acquire passwords as well as credit card numbers and other secret information. Number four, they can be used by private investigators that have been hired to spy on individuals or organizations. Number five, it can also be used by government agencies in order to spy citizens, and especially those citizens of questionable characters. Number six, they can be used by parents to monitor their children's use of computers. Advertising spyware is used to gather personal information about computer users in order to show advertisements. Some of them records email addresses, web browsing history, online shopping habits, passwords, and other personal information. It is usually bundled with freeware or shareware when the unsuspecting user downloads it from the internet. A freebies like screensavers, emoticons, and a clip art will sometimes have spyware hiding on them. What is industrial espionage? This is spying on your competitor to get information that you can use to counter or finish the competitor. It's when confidential information from within companies and other commercial organizations is obtained by spying in an effort to gain some advantage to the detriment of the body that is being spied into. This is done with an aim to get ideas on how to counter by developing similar approach or sabotage. The spies on the ground are usually employees, especially those who are still with the company, but they are on the verge of leaving that company or on-site contractors. The other forms of unauthorized access include an employee who is not supposed to view or see sensitive data by mistake or by design. He or she is able to view or access such kind of data. Number two is strangers who may stray into the computer room when nobody is using the computers. Number three is where we have forced entry into the computer room through weak access points. Network access is another one. That is, network access in case computers are networked and connected to the external world, thus giving room or a door through which unauthorized persons can remotely access your computer or your information system. So, what are some of the control measures to ensure that your information is secure or is secured against unauthorized access? Number one, it is by enforcing data into information access control policies on all employees. That is, enforce data or information access control policies on all employees. Enforce data or information access control policies on all employees. Number two, encrypt the data and information during transmission. The third way is to keep the computer room closed always when there is nobody using it. Number four is to reinforce the weak access points, such as doors and windows with metallic grills and burglar alarms. Number five is by enforcing network security measures. Number six is by using file passwords in order to deter any persons who may get to the electronic files. Another threat is computer errors and accidents. When we talk about a computer error, we are referring to the occurrence of an incorrect result that is produced by the computer. They can be caused by user errors, such as incorrect entry of data values or pressing the wrong keys. They can also be caused by users accessing files or parts of applications that they are not supposed to access. Number three is through program bugs. These are errors in the logic of the program. Number 4 is by printing sensitive reports and unsuspectingly giving them to unauthorized persons. If the end users have too much privilege that allows them to change or access sensitive files on the computer, then accidental access mistakes may occur. The errors and accidental access to data and information may be as a result of people experimenting with the features that they are not familiar with. So, what are some control measures against computer errors and accidents? Number 1 is by giving various file access privileges and roles to the end users and the technical staff in the organization. That is, deny access permissions to certain groups of users for certain files and computers. Number 2 is by setting up a comprehensive error recovery strategy in the organization. Number 3 is by ensuring that you train your users on how to use applications properly in order to minimize data errors. Number 4, the computer programs should be made user-friendly so that any user errors are trapped and a user has a chance to correct them. Number 5, the software should be tested thoroughly before use in order to ensure that it is bug-free. Another threat is theft. Data and information can be lost if computers are stolen or the hardware crashes. Theft plays a significant role in the loss or damage of data. Theft of data happens within an organization with authorized personnel stealing data for one reason or another. So, what are some of the control measures that you can put in place against theft? Number 1 is to employ security guards who can keep watch over data and information centers and backups. Number 2 is by burglar proofing your computer room or the room that contains your information. Number 3 is by reinforcing weak access points such as windows, doors, and roofing with metallic grills and strong padlocks. Number 4 is by creating backups in locations away from the main computing center. Number 5 is by backing up your data and information on a regular basis so as to restore information quickly and accurately to the point you had last backed up. So here is your first assignment or question. Describe the physical and software safeguards involved in data security. You have 1 minute or 30 seconds to think of the answers to this question, and then you confirm whether you are correct or not. So let's see whether you have gotten it right. Physical safeguards. This deals with the protection of hardware and software from accidental or malicious damage, destruction, or theft. Some of the physical safeguards include storing data in a fireproof safe or cabinet so as to protect it even when fire destroys most of the room or building. Number two is storing data in another building or in another location so that in the event of natural disasters, fire, theft of equipment and media, or unauthorized or accidental changing of data in the main system, the backup can be restored. Number three is only allowing authorized personnel access to computer facilities. Number four is by distributing work to a number of employees instead of just one, so that no one employee has access to all the data. Number five is by archiving data. This is removing inactive files from the computer and storing them in a secondary storage device so that in case they are needed in the future, they can be retrieved and used as necessary. Number six is adding reinforcement to doors, windows, and roofs, as well as walls, in order to make the building where data is stored more secure. Let's now focus on software safeguards. A software safeguards, or making use of software safeguards, seeks to prevent unauthorized access to computer files through the use of programs. Some of the most common software safeguards include: number one, using passwords to access the system. When we talk about a password is a combination of characters that are kept secret by the owner and are used to access or control access to computers. Number two is providing different people with different passwords for each individual file or folders so that only specific people can gain access to specific information in the same system. Number three is by using audit trials or access logs, which is a security software program that can audit computer use by providing a comprehensive record of all the network. Number four is encryption. This is encoding or scrambling data during storage or during transmission so that it cannot be understood by somewhere or someone who does not have the encryption key or software to convert it back to its original form. Number five is use of firewall. A firewall is a program, a hardware, or a combination of both that filters the information coming in through your computer systems or network's connection to the internet, thus preventing unauthorized users from gaining access and performing audit and alarm functions that record or access attempts to and from a network. I repeat that a firewall is that program or that hardware or a combination of a hardware and software that filters the information that is coming in through your computer systems or networks connection to the internet, thus preventing unauthorized users from gaining access, as well as performing audit and alarm functions that record or access attempts to and from the network. Number 6 is by the use of antivirus software. An antivirus software is a special type of software that is installed in a computer for checking your system for thousands of known viruses, then remove them, eradicate them, or inactivate them from your computer's hard disk, floppy disk, memory stick, or any other storage medium. Let us now focus our attention on computer crimes. So by the end of this subtopic, you should be able to, number 1, identify types of computer crimes. Number 2, state the measures that can be taken to detect, prevent computer crimes, and seal security loopholes. Let's commence by looking at the types of computer crimes. So some examples of computer crimes are: number 1, trespass. Number 2, tracking. Number 3, tapping. Number 4, hacking. Number 5, cracking. Number 6, piracy. Number 7, fraud. Number 8, sabotage. Number 9, alterations, amongst the others. Let's now look at each of these crimes. Trespass. Trespass is the illegal physical entry to restricted places where computer and its other resources are kept, or accessing information illegally on a local computer over a network. Trespassing is when someone is able to connect to your computer and control it in some form. Some programs have special features that allow for remote access. Others contain bugs that allow a backdoor or hidden access that provides some level of control of the program, and trespassers would make use of this in order to gain access to your computer. Tracking. Tracking is when someone is able to monitor what you are doing in your computer system. This applies mainly to tracking internet usage, where someone may monitor what sites you visited and what links you clicked, so that they can determine your interests and use that information for future marketing. Tapping. Tapping is when someone gains access to information that is being transmitted via communication links by using special programs that are able to intercept the messages that are being sent and received by the unsuspecting computer. In addition, it's done by a person sending an intelligent program on a host computer that sends him or her information from the computer. Hacking. Hacking is intentionally breaking codes and passwords in order to gain unauthorized entry to a computer system's data and information files just for the challenge or as a prank. For example, in order to feel great. When we talk about hacking, it is performed by a person called a hacker. A hacker is a person who intentionally breaks codes and passwords in order to gain unauthorized entry to a computer system data and information files just for fun or to challenge the system. What are some of the reasons that motivate hacking? Some reasons for hacking include, number one, to challenge the system and feel great after successful hacking. Number two is to help computer and software producers secure their systems by reducing weaknesses that are discovered after professional hacking. Patches are corrective programs prepared to seal weaknesses in some versions of software. Hackers are usually excellent computer programmers. In hacking, someone feels the need to understand how the computer or network system of an organization works, but without the intent of causing damage. Usually, a hacker will have figured out the password and the user identification of the authorized user of the computer system. Cracking. Cracking is using guesswork over and over again by a person who has some idea of passwords or usernames of authorized staff until he or she gets access to a computer system data and information files for malicious purposes or for personal gain. A cracker is that person who gains unauthorized access to a computer system data and information files for malicious reasons. My dear students and the rest of the learners, know the difference between a hacker and a cracker. A cracker gains unauthorized access to information by guessing password, and he or she succeeds for the purposes of committing a crime, for the purposes of performing an unauthorized activity, a malicious activity. But a hacker is that the person who guesses password and succeeds just for the purposes of fun or feeling great, but not to perform any malicious activity. That's the difference. Otherwise, both of them guess and guess password over and over again until they are able to break through into the system. When a hacker gains access to that information, he or she just feels great, but does not commit or does not carry out or execute any malicious activity. But when a cracker guesses password and he or she succeeds and is able to access that unauthorized information, he or she performs a malicious activity, like he or she alters that information. He or she may modify the information. He or she may erase that information, or he or she may gain that information and use it against an organization or an individual. So, crackers are criminally minded hackers who access computer systems for the following reasons. Number one, to steal important and highly confidential information. Number two, to copy computer programs illegally. Number three, to alter data. Number four, to destroy data either by deleting it or installing a virus to destroy or corrupt that data or that information. Number five, to transfer money from one bank account to another using the electronic funds transfer. Another form of cracking is trying to look for weak access points for malicious reasons. Some of the most common methods that hackers and crackers use to gain access to computers include, but not limited to, number one, impersonation. Impersonation is where an individual pretends to be someone who is legitimate or who is a legitimate user for that information system. Number two is by use of what we call brute force attacks. Brute force attacks is trying every possible combination of characters in order to find the password. Number three is remote login. This is using the flaws in operating systems in order to find a backdoor that allows a hacker or a cracker to connect to a remote computer and control it. So, what are some of the ways in which hacking or cracking can be protected against? Number one is by logging off correctly from the computer when leaving the computer or the machine. Number two is choosing passwords that are not obvious. What I mean by not being obvious, I mean those passwords that do not relate in any way directly to the user's account. Passwords, therefore, should have at least 6 characters, which should be composed of a mixture of characters and numbers, symbols, upper and lower case letters. Therefore, you should not have a password which is composed of your name or which is composed of just letters of the alphabet or which is just composed of numbers. Mix them up so that it becomes very hard for a malicious person like a hacker or a cracker to be able to guess the password. Number three is keeping passwords confidential and not writing them down anywhere. It is always good that you keep your passwords in your head, in your mind. That is the only most safe place to keep passwords, but not write them on papers, not write them directly on notebooks, and keep them somewhere because they can be easily accessed by unauthorized people and use them for malicious purposes. Number four you should continuously or frequently change your passwords. Don't make use of the same passwords for a long duration because the longer it takes to maintain the same password, the longer it also takes or the easier it becomes for a hacker or a cracker to gain success in guessing your password. So change your passwords as frequently as possible. Number 5 is encrypting data that is transmitted using telecommunication network or through the wireless communication. Number 6 is using other methods of authenticating users for especially those highly sensitive data, such as making use of fingerprints, voice recognition, facial recognition, amongst others. The next one is piracy. Piracy is another crime. This is unauthorized copying, use, or selling of software that has been copyrighted. What are some of the main types of software piracy? Number 1 is licensed user duplication for unlicensed users. This occurs when a user who has legally purchased a software makes copies of that software and distributes it to other individuals or company who are not authorized to use that software. Number 2 is pre-installed software. This is using a copy of a software package that was licensed for use on one computer, but then you end up installing it in many computers. Number 3 is internet piracy. This is downloading unauthorized copies of software from the internet. Number 4 is counterfeiting. This is making illegal copies of software and package it to look like the original packaging from the manufacturer. Some reasons why pirated software should not be used include: number 1, it is an infringement of ownership rights that make the owner lose potential revenue. Number 2, pirated software may not contain all the elements that are required as well as documentation of the programs, therefore causing problems for the user. Number 3, pirated software may not have the upgrade options that are often provided as an add-on, e.g. with an encryption key in legitimate software. Number 4, pirated software may have viruses that can be harmful to your hard drive or network. Number 6, pirated software is simply illegal, and individuals convicted of this crime can pay hefty fines or even get jailed. When we talk about software copyright, we mean that a person or a company who wrote that software is the one who retains the right to decide whether it can be copied or not. So, what are some of the ways that can be used to reduce piracy? Number 1, you should enact laws, or countries should enact laws that protect the owner of data and information against piracy. Number two, always make software cheap enough to increase affordability. This is because if you create a program or a software and then its cost is so huge that people are not able to afford, chances are very high that once you sell a single copy, it will be copied and sold to people at a cheaper price. And therefore, if a software is very expensive, it increases the chances of being pirated. Number three, use licenses and certificates to identify originals. Number four, set installation passwords that deter illegal installation of software. Another crime is fraud. This is stealing through false pretense. It is the use of a computer to cheat other people with the intention of gaining money or information. A fraudsters can either be employees in the company or outsiders who are smart enough to defraud unsuspecting people. These also include non-existing companies that purpose to offer internet services on internet, yet such services do not even exist in the first place. Other forms of fraud may also involve computerized production as well as use of counterfeit documents. When we talk about internet fraud, we are referring to any type of fraud scheme that uses one or more components of the internet to present fraudulent offers to prospective victims and conduct fraudulent transactions. The following are therefore some methods that you can use to prevent fraud or protect yourself from fraud. Number one, have a dedicated computer to perform banking activity without using it to access internet. Number two, never share any personal or company information online with someone that you don't know or someone that you don't trust, because such a person may compromise your information security, such as personal identification numbers, passwords, ID numbers, account numbers, or other sensitive information. In few ones, it is always advisable that you don't share your PIN, your password, your ID number, your account number, or any other sensitive information with anyone online. Unless if it is somebody that you are very sure of, someone that you trust, an organization that you trust, and an organization that has a way of protecting that information from leaking to unauthorized persons. Number three, never share any personal information through an email or text unless it is through an organization's secure online platform. Number four, if you ever receive an email that looks like it's from your official financial institution, such as a bank, requesting you to provide sensitive information, you should make sure that you call that institution first through its official communication line in order to confirm the authenticity of such an email before you share or send any of the requested information. Number 5, always keep your passwords secretly and never leave any documents that contain access to financial or secure data. Number 6, always change your passwords regularly, including those of your wireless networks, and ensure that they are strong enough, consisting of a combination of letters, numbers, and special characters. Number 7, avoid clicking on links whose sources you don't trust or you don't know, regardless of the wonderful promises that they may seem to pass. Don't be tempted to click on a link just because it's making a good financial claim, unless you are 100% sure of its origin. Number 8, make sure that you install and regularly update your anti-malware programs, such as anti-spam, firewall, anti-spyware, and antivirus in your computers and set them to be running automatically. Number 9, always keep your computer operating systems and internet browser current by updating it, because updated operating systems and browsers have more security features than their predecessors. Number 10, don't be tempted to implement any financial transactions online or through calls from individuals that you don't even know, regardless of how good a deal may sound, before you have clearly verified the authenticity of such a business or a caller. Another crime is sabotage. This is illegal destruction of data and information with the aim of crippling service delivery or causing great loss to an organization in order to harm that organization. It is usually carried out by disgruntled employees or those sent by competitors to cause harm to the organization. The following are some methods that you can use to prevent the sabotage to information in an organization. Number 1, create a secure repository for sensitive data that is accessible to only specific and limited to access, while in only specific places or premises. I repeat, create a secure repository for sensitive data that is accessible to only specific authorized people and whose access is limited to use only while in specific places or premises. Number 2, ensure that your computer or information system allows and makes use of effective but manageable encryption of information. Number 3, back up your encrypted information securely and keep the backup media away from the original source. Number 4, segregate the duties of the staff in relation to the information that each can access, such that there are those assigned system management duties, while others are assigned data management duties. Then assign each staff a specific restricted access right to only the information that he or she is in charge of. Number 5, set up your information system to proactively and automatically provide an alert report immediately an authorized person accesses a sensitive file, or also immediately an authorized person accesses a sensitive file. Another crime is alterations. This is illegal changing of data and information without permission, with the aim of gaining or misinforming the authorized users for the sake of hiding the truth. An example of data alteration is when students break into a system to alter exam results, or someone breaks into a banking system to change account details or divert money. The following are some methods that you can use to protect your information from unauthorized alterations. Number 1, secure the entry to your data room using a combination of strong protection mechanisms such as biometrics and light sensors. Number 2, protect the login to your computer system and other devices, as well as documents and applications, using strong passwords and facial recognition tools. Number 3, set up your computer operating systems to log a user off immediately he or she stops using the computer. Number 4, apply field programmable gate array to control access to storage devices. Number 5, create different user profiles and grant system on data access rights to specific individuals for accountability purposes. Number 6, install firewalls to deter any unauthorized access into your computer network, so as to deter any access to persons that might be wanting to gain remote access into a system in order to alter data or information. Let's now look at how you can detect and prevent computer crimes in addition to those that we have already looked at. So, some measures that can be taken to detect, prevent computer crimes, and seal security loopholes include: number 1, audit trial. Number 2, audit trail. Number 3, data encryption. Number 4, making use of log files. Number 5, use of firewalls. Number 6, physical security. Let's look at audit trial. This is a careful study of an information system by experts in order to establish or find out all the weaknesses in the system that could lead to security threats and weak access points to criminals. The purpose of audit trial is to find out: 1, if the information system is meeting its originally intended design objectives. Number two, to find out if all the security measures have been put in place in order to reduce the risk of computer crimes. Number three is to find out if the computers are secured in physically restricted places. Number four is to find out if there is a backup of data and information of the system that can ensure continuity of services even when something serious happens to the current system. Number five is to find out if there are real risks facing the system at the present or in the future. Number two is audit trail. These are used to keep a record of who has accessed a computer system and what operations he or she has performed during a given period of time. They are useful both for maintaining security and for recovering lost transactions. Audit trail components and software products are used to enable network administrators to monitor the use of network resources. Audit trails help to detect trespassing as well as alterations. In case a system is broken into by a hacker, an audit trail can enable their activities to be tracked. Any unauthorized alterations can be rolled back to take the system back to the state it was before the alterations were done. Data encryption. Encrypting or encryption is mixing up, or data encryption is mixing up or scrambling or ciphering data that is being transmitted over a network into a form that it is only the sender and the receiver can be able to understand by reconstructing the original message from the mix through the use of an encryption key. The key is a list of codes for translating encrypted data. It is a password of some sort. Data encryption is a useful tool against network snooping or tapping. Usually, the encryption key is exchanged in advance between the sender and the receiver, and a snooper will not have access to it. Data encryption also promotes data privacy by preventing unauthorized access to systems. The message to be encrypted is called the plain text document. But after encryption using a particular order, that message or that order called algorithm or key, the message which is sent is called ciphertext. Therefore, the message to be encrypted is called the plain text document, while the encrypted text is called ciphertext. Logi files. These are special system files that keep a record of events on the use of the computer and the resources of the information system to be used to easily track who accessed the system, when, and what they did on the system. This is because each user is assigned a username and a password or account. They help the system administrator to monitor and track people who are likely to violate the system security policies. Firewalls. A firewall is a device or software system that filters the data and information exchanged between different networks by enforcing the host network access control policy so as to monitor and control access to or from protected networks. Firewalls can prevent unauthorized remote logins, limit or stop spam, and filter the content that is downloaded from the internet. The firewall can be configured to set the level of security that you require. The highest level of security would be simply to block everything first and then select what types of internet traffic you want to allow. You can also restrict traffic through the firewall so that only certain types of information can get through. You can also better work with the default settings provided by the firewall developer unless there is a specific reason to change it. People who do not have permission to have remote or execute remote requests cannot access the network, and those within cannot access firewall restricted sites when they are outside the network. Firewalls can prevent systems from, number one, remote login. This is when someone is able to connect to your computer and control it in some form, ranging from being able to view or access your files to actually running programs on your computer. Number two is spam, or what we call the electronic junk mail. This is by gaining access to a list email addresses. A person can send unwanted electronic junk mail to thousands of users. And therefore, firewalls can prevent your system and your email from spam. This is because when people, unauthorized people, are able to gain access to your list of email addresses, they can easily send to you and to those other people unwanted electronic junk mail, which may not even be of value to the users. Number three is email bomb. The firewalls can prevent or block email bombs. An email bomb is when someone sends you the same email hundreds of thousands of times until your email system cannot accept any more messages. Number four is viruses. A self-replicating, purposefully written destructive program that attaches itself to other files or documents in order to be executed, leading to data corruption, data loss, and the computer downtime, especially at times when your computers are unusable. So that's what a virus is: a self-replicating, purposefully written destructive program that attaches itself to other files or documents in order to be executed, leading to data corruption, data loss, and computer downtime. So what are some of the physical security measures that you can also put in place, or another way of protecting yourself or your information system is by putting in place physical security measures. So physical security is restricting access to areas with the computers so that it is only those who are authorized are allowed to use the systems. This can be done also by keeping computer rooms locked when not in use, installing alarm systems and other security devices. Computer systems authenticate or verify your right to access them in any one of the following three ways. Number one is by making use of something that they know or something that you know, such as an access code, which can include a username and or a password. Number two is by making use of something that you have. For example, making use of a magnetic token or a smart card. Number three is making use of something that you are. For example, a fingerprint, a retinal scan, your facial curvature, etc. A token is an access identification that goes with the data being transmitted and is used to identify the sender. Some difficulties in detection and the prevention of computer crimes include: number one, the crime might be complex. Number two, it is not easy to find a clear trail of evidence leading to the guilty party. Number three, there are no witnesses. Number four, few people in management and law enforcement know about computers to prevent the crime. Here is your second assignment or a question. State three major types of internet fraud. State three major types of internet fraud. You have 30 seconds to think about the answer to this question. Let's see if you have gotten the answer. Some major types of internet fraud are: number one, telemarketing schemes online. Telemarketing is the buying and selling of products over the internet. Internet fraud therefore occurs when the company or an individual bills the customers for the purchase, collects the money, but does not deliver the items purchased, or delivers a product that is substandard and far less valuable than what was promised. Number two is credit card fraud. This involves setting up temporary bogus business on the internet that lure individuals into giving their credit card numbers in order to steal their identity. Number 3 is business opportunity or work at home schemes online. These are fraudulent schemes that use the internet to advertise business opportunities that supposedly allow individuals to get rich or earn large sums of money while working at home. These schemes typically require individuals to pay for information and material to start the business, but then they fail to deliver the materials or information after having been paid. Let's now focus on the laws governing protection of information systems. By the end of this subtopic, you should be able to: number 1, discuss the laws governing protection of information and communication technology systems. Computer ethics are the moral principles and values that govern the actions and the decisions of an individual or group. They serve as guidelines on how to act rightly and justly when faced with moral dilemmas. The ICT legislation are those laws that govern what information can be kept about an individual and how that information may be used. Any activity that contravenes these laws is considered illegal. Internationally, data security issues are governed by bodies such as International Organization for Standardization, ISO, and Information Security Forum, ISF. ISO is a consortium of national standards institutes. ISF, on the other hand, is a global non-profit making body that is made up of several leading organizations in financial services, manufacturing, consumer goods, and governments. Some of the issues addressed by ICT legislations include: number 1, to protect the confidentiality of information that is kept about an individual. Number 2, to provide legal backing so that it is possible to seek redress if rights are violated. Number 3 is to minimize the effects of exposure to uncensored materials. Number 4 is to observe copyright for those who create original works. Any organization, company, or government body that is storing information on any individual must abide by the following rules. Number 1, the data held must be relevant, adequate, and not more than is required. Number 2, the data must not be used for any purpose other than that for which it was intended. Number 3, data must be updated to maintain its integrity. Number 4, data must be protected from unauthorized access and unauthorized use. Number 5, individuals have the right to check data that is held about them. Number 6, data must not be kept longer than necessary. Number 7, data must not be transferred to other countries which do not have adequate data protection laws. Number 8, organizations must seek consent of individuals prior to collecting, using, or disclosing their personal information. Let's look a little on the Kenya ICT policy. The main contents of the national ICT policy, which was developed by the government of Kenya, include issues of privacy, e-security, ICT legislation, cyber crimes, ethical and moral conduct, copyrights, intellectual property rights, piracy. Some ICT laws in force today include, but not limited to, number 1, privacy laws. These entail non-disclosure of private data to persons other than those to whom it was given. Number 2 is data protection. This entails a safeguard to protect the personal data. It ensures that holders of personal data do not misuse that data. Number 3 is computer misuse. This entails prevention of misuse of both hardware and software, including computer viruses, hacking, amongst the others. Number 4 is health and safety. This entails an explanation of what employers must do and what the equipment must be like in order to safeguard the health and the safety of the employees. Number 6 or number 5 is prohibited publications. This is for the purposes of ensuring that undesirable publications are not published and distributed electronically. Therefore, prohibited publications laws are meant to prevent undesirable publications being published or from being published and distributed electronically. For example, pornography and hate mail. When we talk about information privacy, we are referring to controlling personal and confidential information and controlling what, how, and when this information is communicated to other parties. Data is classified as personal if it can be used in any way to identify an individual. Some examples of how data privacy can be violated include: number 1, e-commerce, mailing lists, and privacy. When you carry out online transactions, you subscribe to lists, online magazines, or newsletters. Some of that information which you provide may be retained as part of your record in the company's computer systems. So, if anyone breaks into their system, they may gain access to this information and misuse it. Number 2 is privacy via the telephone. Many people set their telephone recording machines to record incoming calls when they are away. Some organizations use an automatic dial-up program to call area residents. When the call reaches your online telephone recording machine, the computerized message is recorded on tape in your machine. Many people perceive this form as an invasion of their privacy, and they feel that there is need for legislation to regulate such marketing tactics. Number 3 is privacy via email. Computer users treat an email much as they would telephone. They freely express their thoughts in uncensored manner, thinking that their messages are private. Also, some email software make backups of messages and store these files and a different file extension. These messages can be retrieved and used as evidence in a lawsuit. Some measures that can be taken to ensure email privacy include: number 1, know all possible locations in the computer system where email messages could be stored. Number 2, buy commercial software that can truly erase files. Number 3, find out about institution's policy or about your institution's policy regarding the privacy of email messages. Congratulations, my dear students and the rest of the learners, for learning about data security and the controls. You can access more computer or ICT videos by clicking or tapping on MLSwap ICT YouTube channel below this video in YouTube. You can also subscribe to this channel by tapping on subscribe button that is also located below this video in YouTube if it's not currently reading as subscribed. You can also visit and subscribe to MLSwap Life Skills YouTube channel for free life skills, motivational and inspirational resources. For any further correspondence, kindly write to us through the email mlswap@gmail.com. Thank you very much for listening to me and be blessed.